Hello everyone, welcome back to the Clara CFO Group channel. Today we are going to talk about what is a balance sheet. What is a balance sheet? Have you ever been just confused about what is a balance sheet versus what is an income statement? Well, I'm actually going to do two videos. I'm going to explain both of those statements to you so that you can feel confident when you need to look and find a number in your business. You know exactly where to find it. And also that if your accountant gives you a balance sheet or an income statement, you know what to look at so you don't look silly, because I think, well, we need to know our numbers, but also I also want to help you guys feel more empowered to run your businesses and also know what your numbers are looking like and where to find what you need. If that sounds good, please stay tuned. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, I would love to have you as a subscriber here. And always remember that you can also put any questions or comments that you have in the comment section below, and we can engage down there. So check that out, and we will put other resources in the description box as always. Let's get into what is a balance sheet. So the best way for me to talk about a balance sheet is to give you real quick high level, and then we're going to look at a balance sheet, okay? But high level, a balance sheet is a report that you can pull from your accounting system. You pull it or you run it as of a point in time. So you won't necessarily need to run your balance sheet for 1 month or 1 year. What you do is you decide the date at which you want to look at your balances. And so think about balances and that word to help you figure out what you need, because what the balance sheet shows is it shows what are the balances. I don't like to use that word when I'm explaining something, but what are the amounts in your accounts at a certain point of time. Okay, so what are the amounts in your accounts at a certain point of time? That is maybe what a good example of a balance sheet. So for example, if you have a bank account and you want to see as of December 31st at the end of the year, how much is in that bank account or how much is usable in that bank account, that is where you would find that information on the balance sheet. This will make more sense as we actually look at it. And it's broken up into 3 different sections: assets, liabilities, and equity. I will show you that as well. I think everything else we'll talk about in the screen share. So let's go ahead and get over into the screen share. Okay, so here we have a balance sheet that I've pulled. This is from a real company, and I've taken out anything that looks identifiable so you guys don't know who it is, obviously. But numbers are just numbers on the paper. But I want to give you an example of a pretty simple balance sheet. And this one is a cash basis balance sheet. So we actually don't have something like accounts receivable on here, but we do have a couple liabilities that are showing up. And this is just how a cash basis balance sheet is pulled directly from QuickBooks. So what you're always going to see is that assets will be at the very first part of your balance sheet. So really any balance sheet you ever look at, assets will be first. And the order is always going to be current and then long-term. Similar with liabilities, you're going to look at current and long-term. And usually current means anything that is under a year old or might be due in less than a year. So for liabilities, for example, anything that's due in less than a year is considered a current liability, and anything that's longer term, over a year, would be considered a long-term liability. Not too hard to remember. Current assets mean that you need to be able to get it immediately or within the year. Then it would be yours within, you'd be able to hold it and have it very liquid within the year. This matters more, obviously your bank accounts would, but this matters more with investments. You can't necessarily, some investments you make, it's not like you can just go and pull them at any point in time. So it gets kind of important when you're talking about investments. Or also receivables. And receivables are things that people owe you and you will be getting. Most of our accounts receivables are going to be short term, but it might be something, maybe you have a long-term contract with somebody who owes you maybe tranches of money over time. And in that situation, you might have a long-term receivable. We don't see those too often, but that's just an example of something you might see. So current assets would be things like your bank accounts, your checking accounts, your savings accounts, anything that you actually owe, it's your money. It's your money in the business. If that's the case, it's going to show up in these current assets. You can also have things like inventory on your balance sheet. You could have accounts receivable, like I mentioned before. You could have maybe furniture and equipment. So getting down into fixed assets. Fixed assets are usually considered more long-term assets because you're holding them for a long period of time and usually depreciating them over time. Those will show up on your assets. So think about assets as anything that you own. You own it. Even if you have a note out on it or you owe some money on it, it's something that is like physical or tangible. There are intangible assets, but most of us, it's usually a physical something or a ownership to something, like ownership to the cash in the bank account, ownership to an investment. There are also intangible assets, but I think for the purposes of balance sheet beginner, we're gonna not talk about intangible assets right now. But think about assets as stuff that you own, okay? Going into the next part of the balance sheet is the liabilities section. And liabilities, this is the stuff that you owe. Own is assets, OWE is your liabilities, okay? So this is gonna be, credit cards, you've been charging stuff on your credit cards, you need to pay the credit card. This is gonna be any long-term loans you've taken out. This might be if you have a line of credit and you need to pay somebody. This could be a loan from a shareholder, for example. Let's say that the business owner wanted to put money into the business, but they wanted to get it paid back. That could potentially show up here on the liabilities. And then any type of other business loan that you might have. If you have a auto loan for any car that you might own in the business, or also anything that, like any equipment loans, things like that, all of that would go on here. Keep in mind, balance sheet is only for business related things. Don't put your personal house on here as a business asset or put your mortgage payment on here as a liability. No, that's your personal balance sheet. If you want to keep a personal balance sheet, that's fine, but this is for business only, okay? So again, short-term, long-term, we talked about that. So you're going to have current liabilities will always be before long-term liabilities. And then the last part is equity. And I think this is where most people get confused. Really, equity is just all of the assets minus your liabilities equals your equity. And they call it a balance sheet because your total liabilities plus your total equity equals your total assets, okay? So in this situation, this is $30,000, and then our equity is actually negative in this situation because basically this business owner has taken out a little bit more cash than what they've actually earned in the business over time. So in this situation, it is a liabilities minus equity equals assets, okay? So that is why it balances. So you'll see they'll always have the total liabilities and the total equity, and then they will sum these two amounts together. And this amount should always equal total assets. If they don't equal, it probably means there's a little something off in your accounting and you'll need to go and get that checked out. So that is the balance sheet basics. I wanted to start with this video. If you guys have more questions about the balance sheet, please put them in the comment section below. I'm happy to go over those. I'll either answer them in the comments or I will do another video to kind of dive deeper into what else you might find on a balance sheet. Okay, so hope that helps. All right, bye everybody.